Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Chargers Powder Hour podcast. Colin Appel and Miles Raruka here. Chargers coming on, or excuse me, we're coming off a fresh loss. Chargers dropping a game to Miami, 36-34, and not the way that we wanted to be jumping on this podcast. Definitely disappointed. We'll get to all that, but man, are you okay? Are you all right? How are we doing? It's probably been what, half hour since the end of the game.
Yeah, I'm fine, man. I just keep reminding myself it's only week one. I saw a lot of things today that I'm looking forward to, progressing on and talking about tonight, and just things that I'm looking forward, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Saw a lot of things that I really loved. But yeah, man. We'll get into the logistics, but yeah, it feels like different years, same shit, pretty much.
It definitely does feel like that, and it's at least we know football's back. Like, I was stressed as fuck for 3 hours on a Sunday, really, with no like break in between or any moment for like, to relax. So yeah, that feels normal. That's in check, and my heart rate is definitely in tune with that as well. So man, let's just get into it, man. Let's rip the band-aid off here. Um, like I mentioned, Chargers dropping a tough one, 36-34. Uh, a lot that we can talk about and a lot that we're going to unpack here, but just I guess my instant reaction to this one was the defense looked like trash, and we'll talk about them specifically as well. But man, just a disappointing game. The Chargers, both on offense and defense, had their chances to win this game multiple times. They had their opportunities to put a significant stamp on the game and really make life tough for the Miami Dolphins. But they failed to execute. They failed to do it, and credit to we got to give credit to the Dolphins and to Tua Tagovailoa and just that whole offense in general, man. They really countered last year's, Brandon Staley game plan pretty much perfectly today. I mean, there's nothing that this defense did other than maybe the JC Jackson interception um, to really slow down this defense. I mean, they pretty much had their way the entire game, and it was just kind of a masterclass of how to pick a Brandon Staley defense apart.
Yeah, really has got me thinking about Mike McDaniel's interview of him laughing about Brandon Staley's scheme. Definitely has the right to laugh about it, as we saw today. There's just nothing we could do. I mean, like you said, props to Tua. Tua played one hell of a game, one of the best games I've ever seen Tua play today.
Facts.
Along with, I mean, dude, Tyreek just continues to haunt us in our dreams. So but man, I don't know what happened. Like last year playing the Dolphins, I mean, Brandon Staley was able to scheme up so much stuff to be able to take away those speedy threats outside, and today just dude can stop a nosebleed. So I don't even know what to tell you, man.
Yeah, just super disappointing. I mean, especially week one, you love to see, your team come out, start the season strong and just look good, look the part, you have everyone healthy. We talked about that coming into this matchup, coming into week one, how week one is, I mean, 90% of your guys are going to be out there. I get that some guys do start the season hurt, but 90% of your starters are going to be out there. And there's really no excuses. You can't use the excuse of like, well, they played our second string defense, or, we were really thin at this position and that really showed. Um, there, there is no excuse for this defensive performance. And, you know, it's something that I would have liked to think would have been fixed by now, or at least would be progressing and trending in the right direction. And it just seems that it isn't. And I think they have their moments. This defense definitely has the talent and the playmakers on it to shine in certain situations, but consistently, it's something is off, and it's not working.
Yeah, for a defensive mastermind at Coach Brandon Staley, it's like this is probably the worst defensively, the worst game defensively that probably we've seen over the last like 5-6 years. I mean, we just got absolutely torched, and there was nothing that we could do. We just looked foolish out there on defense. Everyone looked lost. Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, where were they at today? Not 100% sure where they were at. J.C. Jackson had one nice play. He had the interception, and then he had another PBU. But I mean, they did nothing to help that dude. You can't just go one-on-one with Tyreek Hill and expect to get away with it. They did nothing to help J.C. Jackson. And then just more dumb shit. That pass interference right before the half on J.C. was dumb. Just little things like bringing the ball out of the end zone on that pick, which, ended up, being some points for the Dolphins just based off of field position. So just little shit
Yeah.
like that. JC cost us a lot of points today. And just our inability to be able to take away speedy threats, to leave the middle of the field literally wide open on every single play. Yeah, it was just a
Yeah.
recipe for disaster, and the Dolphins capitalized.
Rough day for JC Jackson, rough day for Brandon Staley, rough day for Kenneth Murray Jr., rough day for really, those are just the big ones that come to mind,
Rough day for
and
everyone on that defense not named Derwin James, really.
pretty much. Look, and credit to Mike McDaniels again. I think he countered last year's game plan by Staley perfectly with what he did today. He set up Tua with very quick and easy throws. It pretty much neutralized any pass rush we brought. We got guys in the backfield at times, and here I am thinking, okay, here we go. Like, this is going to be a negative play. Like, finally, we're going to get one here, and there just always seemed to be a guy in the flat or, right over top that was just, here, take this little 3-yard pass and turn it into 7 or 8. And that's kind of how the day went. The linebackers did not have a great showing. And yeah, it's just disappointing when you hear all off season how things are different, right? Because that's what organizations want to believe. It's what they want you to believe, after 5-6 months off. It's, hey, we've addressed these issues, we've fixed them, and then we're excited to take it to another level this year. And it just didn't seem like anything's really changed on defense. I texted you around halftime, or I think before that, maybe even in the first quarter still, of just, yeah, I think there were 2 series in, and I texted you. I was like, well, it just looks like nothing's changed. And I was willing to give them more than 2 series. I'm still willing to give them more than just one game, but it's not a great look. It's not a great, start to the season. After all that talk in the offseason, everyone that watched All In, pretty much is rolling their eyes right now with all the, the hype and Brandon Staley being like, oh, I've met with Steve Kerr this offseason, so that's going to make me a better coach. Like, I'm not trying to just dog on him, but it makes me kind of chuckle at some points of like, has anything really changed? Have we really done anything different to expect a different outcome on this defense?
I mean, I was convinced, but yeah, it only really took one game, really one half of football to see like it's the same old shit. It's a new year, same old shit, which is crazy just because we know that we have the pieces, but they just were not placed in good positions at all today, which I think a lot of that's got to go on Brandon Staley. But give credit where credit's due. I think the Dolphins are a very, very good team. I think that they're a very explosive offense. And like I said, Tua played like the best game I've ever seen him play. So yeah, at
I
the end
would,
of the day, like
yeah.
they were on fire, and our defense just couldn't do shit to stop them.
Yeah, I think this was a storyline of ours coming into today was how was this matchup, specifically Mike McDaniels versus Brandon Staley? What was that going to look like a second time around? And I definitely think, obviously, McDaniels won this matchup, and the Dolphins, just flat out played a great game. Like, you could argue, you put up 34 points, you have a good shot to win pretty much any week. Defense has to step up and do its job, but they just, this was such a close back and forth game. Both teams had chances to win it, to go up 2 scores, to kind of make it a one-sided game, and it just stayed even. And I obviously I look back at all the chances this defense had. I mean, there was three fumbles, three fumbled snaps. We only recovered one. We had a penalty on one of them as well. They had a chance to get off the field at the end of the half, and that allowed them 3 points on a stupid mistake by J.C. Jackson. They had a chance to go out and win the game. They couldn't do that. They had a couple fourth downs as well that they weren't able to come up on. So it's just a lot of opportunities for this defense, and they weren't able to get it done, and that's a big red flag for me kind of going forward. And are they always going to play offenses to this caliber? No, but something has to change. And if these two teams are to meet again at some point down the road in the playoffs, this isn't a terrible outcome. I think the game is right there. This very easily we could be talking about our defensive struggles and still talking about how the Chargers were able to pull this one out. So, just take it, learn from it, and move on, I guess.
That's all you got to do. I don't know. Yeah, just defensively, I've just never seen a team get shredded so bad as we were today. I mean, like through the first half, it was his average like reception was like 12 something yards through the first half. And I mean, that's just, yeah, I don't know. It was just a really inexcusable effort. And
a lot of that too is, I'm going to keep saying his name, but Mike McDaniels, man, like he came up with a brilliant game plan of getting guys open on the flat, getting these easy, quick throws, because everyone was talking about how, Teron Armstead out, these two edge rushers, Bosa and Mack, are going to feast, and he just totally neutralized that with a single game plan of, hey, let's get the ball out quick. Let's not even give them time to really, get pressure on us. Like let's dink and dunk. We have the speed to do it. We have the speed. If we dink, that can turn into a 25-yard gain. And there were a couple of them that did. Like that's the luxury that you have when you have two guys and, Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill. And I'm just really bummed that our defense didn't really plan enough for that. I think we played very loose. I think we were very like saggy on defense, and that's kind of different than what we came out and did last year, where we were very physical, aggressive, jammed a lot of receivers at the line, and didn't give Tua, a lot of time to get his rhythm. It just wasn't the same defense. And it's just a overall very, very disappointing start to the season. But there's also other areas that were disappointing too, which I want to get into. But for right now, we have to stay on this defense because it was so bad. And I do want to bring up some stats here because this is just, this is ridiculous. But this defense today in total gave up 536 yards, 466 in the air, and only 70 on the ground. I honestly thought that 70 number was lower. I did not think it was going to be that low. It seemed like this team ran a lot more on us, but really when I kind of zoom out and look at it, they really just ran it. They just didn't like have any negative running plays really. I know they had a couple where we were able to kind of stuff them, but I remember thinking, we stuffed a run like early in the second quarter, and I was like, wow, that's the first run that we've stuffed. It took us a whole quarter to be able to just stuff a run for no gain at the line. And, it just seemed like they were constantly getting 4 yards on us.
Yeah, no, yeah. After like the first drive, I was like, yeah, this is the same rush defense, can't stop a nosebleed. And then at the end of the day, it ended up being the pass defense that hurt us the most.
So they averaged 3.5 yards per rush, which again isn't terrible, but that's enough for a first down if you run it 3 times in a row. So that's still not great.
Not great, but definitely I would say it was an improved unit. But I don't think we didn't get enough of a sample size of the Russian defense today to really know if that's going to be a huge issue or not. We definitely will next week against the Titans. So
they had 70 rushing yards on 20 attempts, which we had 40 attempts on the ground, and that's something I'll talk about here in a second. But yeah, I mean, overall, don't get me wrong, a good showing by this run defense. Definitely better than what we've been accustomed to over the last few seasons. It's definitely the lack of this pass rush and the secondary that just got torched today and allowed for the 466 yards of offense. I mean, dude, I love Herbert, but he's never been able to throw for over 400 yards. And this
No,
is
I
not
know.
me being like, oh, no, I'm not for a second thinking that. I mean, I still truly, in my heart of hearts, believe Justin Herbert is the superior quarterback and his career numbers back it up. But it's just, to me, it's a fucking red flag when Tua Tagovailoa comes in and throws for 450 plus on your offense or on your defense, excuse me. I mean, I don't have it in front of me, but like what other quarterbacks have thrown for 450 plus yards on a Brandon Staley defense in this era of Chargers football? Like, that's bad. I mean, you would expect maybe a Mahomes or Josh Allen or whatever, like one of those big Joe Burrow, one of those big passing threats to really go off on a defense like this, but you allow Tua to go for 450 plus with 3 touchdowns. I don't know. Like, there's nothing that really screams more of a red flag, in my opinion, when it comes to Brandon Staley, when it comes to this defense, when it comes to everything. Like, I'm very nervous for how the rest of this season's going to go. I still think this is a 11, 12 win team, but it's just like, has anything really changed when you boil it down to the very, like, put us in a wild card game right now or next weekend, and I'm not convinced like anything different would happen. Like, maybe we get out to a lead, but maybe we still find a way to like blow it. I don't know. Like, that's the vibes after week one, and it sucks, dude. Like, I really didn't want to have Staley like hot seat conversation 1 week into the season, but I know it's going to be
It's
prompted.
scalding.
It's going to be prompted up in national media. Like, I don't know if I don't know how much they're going to dig into him, but it's definitely going to be a talking point. And it's just with fans, it's like I really was rooting for the guy to get off to a good start and to at least like show me something. And again, it's one weekend. Who's to say, 4 weeks from now, 5 weeks from now, we're not 4-1. Like, a lot can happen, but it's just bad juju. It's bad vibes to start a season.
Oh, 100%. Nothing on that field convinced me today that that defensive unit is any better than we've seen in the past. I mean, this is one of the worst defensive performances that I can remember, let alone to Tua, like you mentioned, our favorite QB in the league, obviously. Yeah, it just sucks, man. Just we were just all over the place. Just nothing seemed to be going. Nothing went well defensively. Really, nothing went well.
Like you mentioned earlier, pretty much everyone but Derwin James, you know, but even then, like even Derwin, like,
Yeah, I mean,
not to say
Derwin
that
didn't
he had
play
a
his
bad
best
game by any
game.
means, but it was the lack of production that always kind of ask it always kind of has you asking, like, where were they today? Where was Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa? And it's not that they didn't have the game that JC Jackson had where he visibly, you know, cost his team some opportunities to do something, but it's just the credit to that offensive line, man. Credit to, like, the Miami Dolphins beat us today. As bad as we played, we still had a chance to win it. We still had a chance to win it, and that's kind of what I was alluding to just a minute ago. Of as bad as this defense was, we could still be sitting here talking about the terrible performance, but with a win. With just a ugly win. That's a different conversation, but it's not too far off. Of what could have happened. So yeah, I mean, other defensive stats. I mean, let me pull some up here. Um. Oh, here's a good one. Third down. So the Dolphins were 4 of 9 for third down. So it's not a bad showing, but it's also not great.
There were some
One
critical third downs though that they did get for sure.
Yes,
That last possession that they scored on that 3rd and 15 was
and they
massive.
had a couple of 3rd and 15s. That they were not able to get off the field, and that hurts. That really hurts. And of course, the Dolphins only had one fourth down attempt. I was thinking they had at least two, but that was the one before the half that ended up in 3 points. So that one hurts as well. I believe that was a 4th and 7. I don't know why I can remember that, but that sounds right. And yeah, again, this defense, they had their opportunities to get off the field, to change the narrative of this game, and they weren't able to do it. Um, Other than that, I mean, they were still able to force 2 turnovers. They won the turnover battle, and they were still somehow able to lose the game. Sorry, I can't talk. I'm like 4 beers deep, 5 beers deep.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that it was only a 2-point game with how our defense played, 0 sacks is definitely the most surprising stat by far. I thought we would be able to get a lot of pressure today, but like you said, McDaniel was just able to scheme up easy throws for Tua and able to get the ball out of his hands quick. Just wasn't under a ton of duress. One other guy I do want to give flowers to though is Tuli Tuipulotu. Massive tackle for loss on one of those run plays.
Yep.
So give him some props.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I was out of my seat on my couch when that happened. I was like, "Let's go, baby!" I saw the number and I'm like, "Oh, that's Thule." And yeah, that was awesome. That was a small bright spot on this defense for today. And yeah, I mean, other than that, I mean, look, we can just keep tearing into this defense. We could spend the whole episode tearing into this defense, but pretty much to sum it up, like it sucked. It has to be better, and there's no excuses at this point. That's really just like the 3 big takeaways. It was not good. It literally has to get better. It can't really get much worse from this standpoint, and it's just disappointing.
I'm very faithful that it will get better. I think that this is definitely one of the tougher matchups this defense will have to face this year, just with the amount of speed the Dolphins possess. But yeah, I just hope that they take it as a kind of a wake up call, a real hit to the chin, and just say, yeah, we gotta get something, we gotta figure something else out because whatever was going on today was not working. So
Yeah, I totally agree. And this is a perfect time to kind of switch strides and take things over to the offensive side because I think the overall majority of the overall reaction of this game from the offensive standpoint for the Chargers is generally pretty positive. But I also had some concerns as like just watching the offense. I don't know if you want to call them concerns, but just some things that I noted. I guess I couldn't help but like take a mental note of. And let's get into numbers right away because from the naked eye, this offense putting up 34 points. That's pretty solid, and that's pretty on par with what Kellen Moore brings with his offense. He led the league in points per game a couple times as the Cowboys offensive coordinator. So to be able to put up 34 in your debut, not too many people are going to complain with that. But I think when you really break down this offense as a whole and you kind of read between the lines a little bit, there are a few areas of, again, I don't know if you want to call them, I wouldn't say concern, but just like interesting, things that I kind of like put asterisks next to remember. Um, Overall, this offense had 433 total yards, 199 coming in the air and 234 coming on the ground. That stat is ridiculous. I don't remember the last time I've seen that many numbers, in the rushing column for this offense, but that's awesome. That's a stat alone. If you were to tell me on Friday night, hey, the Chargers are going to run for 234 yards this weekend, I would probably chalk up a W just based off that stat alone, because that's something that we're not used to. I mean, it's a huge breath of fresh air to watch this offense consistently get 4 or 5 yards on the ground, and it just does so much for this offense in other areas as well.
Yeah, we're going to be able to use a lot of those run packages to be able to run some play actions off of. And it's just going to create a lot of opportunities for this offense. It's definitely a more level offense than we've seen in the past. And that's like the biggest thing for the offense this year is we wanted to be able to see them run the ball. We want to be able to see them. We weren't able to see them in a position to get position today to run out the clock and, be able to win it that way. But that is something that is going to prove very valuable to us in the future. And I just think that having that in our back pocket and at least feeling secure in that sense that we can run the ball is always a good feeling and something that we have not felt in very much recently. So,
Yeah, again, such a breath of fresh air seeing our line and our run game just kind of gel together. Something that I did notice based off the running game, and I don't know if you noticed it too. I didn't really see too much noise about it on Twitter, which that's kind of my first spot to see like the instant reactions for a lot of stuff as it's happening live. And I didn't really see a ton on it, so I was kind of curious to get your take here. But do you think too, as great as we ran the ball today, do you think we ran it almost to a fault, like too much to a fault? Because I kept waiting for moments of the play action to open up. I know, like those first couple of drives that we were just pounding the ball down their throat. I was just thinking, great, this is awesome. Like this is going to open up play action, and we're going to be able to break this whole game open in the second half, or even later in the first half, because this was just a couple drives into the game. I kept waiting for it, and I kept waiting for those. At the end of the day, you zoom out, and Justin Herbert finishes with 199 yards passing. Well, I think he might have had over 200.
he had 228, I believe.
Okay, this is saying team passing 199. That always fucks me up. I never understand that. But anyways, yeah, he had just over 200 yards, and you're thinking like, okay, this was the same offense that promised me they were gonna pass the ball downfield at a high rate, and I didn't see that. And again, I think part of it is due to the matchup itself. Dick Fangio, the way he runs his defense, he's gonna keep a lot of stuff in front of him. Light boxes, not a lot of guys over the middle. I understand that, so I'm taking that into account. But were you surprised to see like the lack of shots downfield and just like that in general?
Yeah, very much so. It honestly, like, you could have told me that we were watching a Joe Lombardi offense with the way that we were throwing the ball. Just not a lot of looking downfield whatsoever. I just don't know if they weren't called up, if they just weren't getting open, or I mean, Mike Williams missed some of that first half, so obviously there's your big deep threat right there taken away. That obviously hurts a little bit. But yeah, I was waiting. I mean, we ran the ball so effectively. I was like, this is gonna open up so much in the pass game, and it did to a fault. But I mean, nothing over like 20 yards. I mean, I want to say we only had like one or two completions over 20 yards, and one of them was on that late third down on one of our last drives, and then that dump off to Eckler was another one. And other than that, yeah, I was waiting for it, and I'm hoping that we'll see it this season, which I'm sure that we will. But yeah, overall passing wise, I mean, I just don't think we had to do too much with how
Yeah,
the run game was being carried.
I'm hoping it's more of a matchup thing, and if it is, man, dude, shout out to Miami, because for them going out and getting a guy like Vic Fangio to run their side of the ball. I mean, I think that really, we're seeing it right now, and firsthand. Like it's a different Miami team defensively than they were a year ago, and they really challenged this offense. Like as don't let the numbers in the box score fool you. Like this offense did not have it easy today. That at times it might have looked like that, with certain drives that happened quick. But when you really zoom out and you really look at this offense as a whole, they left a lot on the table, I think. And that's saying something because they were still able to put up 34 points.
Yeah, 100%, man. Yeah, I just, especially just at the end, with how our offense was able to move the ball the whole game, to have it end the way that it did, to have our O line really collapse there on the last drive, and to end that way is really was just the final gut punch, and that part really sucked. So we just need to hopefully not even put our, hopefully if our defense can start getting stops, we won't even be in that kind of position, and then we can just run the ball and drain that clock. But yeah, we just weren't in a position to be able to do that today, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, I really wanted to see Justin Herbert and this offense really air it out, but again, got to give credit due to that defense, and hopefully it's a little different next week. When I think of the offense as a whole, just thinking about players that I'd like to shout out, obviously, I think most of the offensive shout outs have to come from the line or from the running game, just based on how this game went. You know, Justin didn't really do anything too crazy. At times, he missed a few throws. It just seemed a little rusty at times, kind of throwing the ball down the field. But really, I mean, just this running game and this offensive line dominated, and I feel bad for them because they really had a great game, and I don't really know if there's really call for much other recognition on this side of the ball other than those two groups.
Yeah, that's really all I got. Offense was just nothing crazy. Was just really happy about how we ran the ball, but that's really all you can say about the offense today. I'm looking forward to, like you said, matchup basis, being able to challenge Justin's arm a little bit and be able to really get going with some of our weapons. So
Yeah.
I will say one thing I did like though was Justin looked a lot less afraid to use his legs today. We saw him scramble for a few first downs, which felt like that was something that we were missing in the past. So that was that was
Yes.
that was nice to see.
Yeah. Glad you brought that up because that was something that I noticed early on. I don't know if that changed at all later in the game. If he just wasn't maybe necessarily looking to run first or really trying to look for something down the field. But yeah, that's another small positive I think we can take away is just he did seem, and I did see him checking stuff at the line. I did see him audible out of a few things and took note of that. So, we're seeing a more polished Justin Herbert, a veteran Justin Herbert at this point. He's in year 4 and um, not a bad game by him, but not a, just kind of a so-so game. I really don't think you can blame him too much. I think it's more just kind of how the matchup went about and, how this offense, how Kellen Moore drew it up. I just don't think they could have been more aggressive downfield, but who's to say that, maybe it doesn't result in an interception, trying to get too greedy, and fitting something into a window that just isn't going to happen. So, overall, I mean, I like a great game, or excuse me, a good game by Herbert, great game by Tua, um, and a great game by really just Miami's offense, Mike McDaniels, and their defense. Their defense did enough. It wasn't pretty. They looked just as bad as we did in certain phases, but they still did enough, and they made plays, and they were able to put the game away.
Yeah, man, just a brutal loss. Definitely one that sucks, but just got to keep telling ourselves 16 more games this season. It's only week 1, and there's positives to take away. So that's always good. It's good to find the good things. So
Yeah. All right, man. We might finish. Well, I don't know. This is gonna be an interesting last few minutes or so because we have about 25 minutes left. We might finish early, but it also brings us to our most interesting topic of the day. So I wouldn't be surprised if we still fit this into an hour because there are quite a bit of things to talk about when it comes to this individual. But I want to talk about Brandon Staley. Brandon Staley? Question mark. As our topic banner reads. But Look, man, I as I was saying earlier, I really did not want to have this conversation week one. Not, I still don't want to have it as we're literally bringing it up, but we have to talk about Brandon Staley. We have to talk about just, is this experiment working? Is it going to work long term? At what point do you just be real with yourself and face the facts? And like, I myself am not putting him on the hot seat. I know he's probably already on it for most folks, but I just really wanted to talk about it and get your instant reaction of what's your new reaction of Brandon Staley after today's game?
Bro's a fraud. Defensive mastermind, my ass. We hire this guy to come change the culture of our defense. We rave all offseason about, well, Miami last year, Brandon was able to keep everyone in check. Games like that are what makes me think like, okay, yeah, Brandon Staley is really can get this thing done. And then games like today this was the worst defense performance under Brandon Staley that we've seen. And it's not particularly close either, just couldn't stop a nosebleed. We brought him in to change this culture, and so far through 3 seasons, well, through two in a game, had not seen that. Had not seen that whatsoever from Brandon Staley. I think his days are numbered. I'm not saying I don't think they're gonna fire him mid-season, but yeah, if our defense puts on more displays like they did today, there's no way in hell he's gonna retain his job after this year.
You just don't see, like, because I'm kind of with you, and if I'm reading you right, you're basically saying like you just don't see, there's like, if this does continue, there's not a way that he can retain his job. I
Mm-mm.
mean, I honestly
There
like
shouldn't be.
there's a lot of people, not a lot of people. There are some fans out there. I don't know if it's a majority. I know it's a significant amount just based off Twitter and being on that for a few years, but there's a significant amount of fans that would like to see this be his last season as a coach of the Chargers. And I at this point I'm like, I'm kind of there. It seems like everything he's done in his tenure, like
It's like,
he just has
what does he bring to the table?
he just hasn't been able to gain any real traction. And when he has, when it seems like he finally is, he shoots himself in the foot by making either stupid decisions to cost him a game down the stretch, or last season it came in the version of you know putting guys out there that you don't have to be out there playing the starters, and then boom, a starter gets hurt and that costs you down the road. Like, it's just like there was a point last season late in the year where we were going on a run where people were forgetting all the Brandon Staley mishaps, and they were kind of starting to put that beyond them, and they were like, hey, we're winning right now. We're looking good, we're getting stronger, we're headed for the playoffs. This is what we just had to wait for. And then all of a sudden it all comes crashing down at the end of last season, and the cherry on top is the meltdown in Jacksonville. So there was a lot of people already like going into this last offseason, like they thought he should have been out. And I mean, I never want to root against someone losing their job because I know, it's easy to do that as a fan. But man, if he doesn't get going like quick, I just don't see how him or Tom Telesco can keep their jobs, because at this point, I'm willing to put just as much of a hot seat on Tom Telesco as I am Brandon Staley, if not more. Like, are you fucking kidding me, Tom? What the fuck are we doing here?
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm ready to go quite that far, but yeah, if this continues, like Brandon Staley might be
Okay,
jobless by week 5. Let's get
but
Kellen
how
Moore in the
far are
driver's
you
seat.
willing to let it go with Tom Telesco? Like, do we
Oh,
need 15 seasons, 20 seasons of like the same shit to be like, oh, actually, we
well,
should probably think about getting a new GM? Like, how many chances do we have to give a guy? It's not, at this point, like, wins and losses, I understand. If not, I mean, he's not the one out there calling the plays. Like, I get that, but it's roster construction, it's drafting, it's hiring coaches, it's hiring staff, it's player evaluation, player development. Like, all of that stuff has to come into And you have to look at it all. You can't just be like, well, we'll keep him because he drafts really well, but he sucks at a lot of other shit. Like, no, like you have to have a guy that's in there that year after year is building the best roster, and it says something because he's the guy that a lot of and it, Tom Telesco is a very collaborative general manager, which is a good thing. I that to me that's a pro. Like I like that about GMs, but it also says something when you're the guy, if you're collaborating with the head coach that you brought in and that's not working, because Brandon Staley has had everything and everything he's asked for since he's come in to this team, he's pretty much been handed. Stuff that you could argue other coaches that under the same general manager they were never gifted. Like Staley got the green light to go out and make a splash in free agency and bring in guys like Khalil Mack, J.C. Jackson, Bryce Callahan, Kyle Van Noy. Like you go, the list goes on. And for what? Like, what's the result? What's the outcome of that? So at some point,
466 yards at Tua, apparently.
right? Like at some point, like, okay, it's great that your general manager collaborates and gives everything that their head coach needs, but it's like, bro, you're picking the wrong guys to collaborate with. That's on you. You know, like it's on you. You're the guy that brought him in. You're the guy that hired him.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I think, I mean, obviously we got a lot more football to be played yet this year, but it is time to not just have a talk about Staley. It's time to have a more serious discussion about Telesco. You know, after week 17, ask me that question again, and I'll be able to give you a much better answer.
And I guess maybe the way I don't know how I want to phrase this, but the vibe that I would like to ask it in is like, are we always going to be fooled by like, are we always going to be content and fooled by like little moments, little like flashes of, because I can see our fan base or just even just like a common fan, you know, let's say we do make the playoffs this year. Let's say we go 10-7, make the playoffs. Disappointing. Don't win the division. Wild card. I don't know where we end up wild card weekend, but let's say we win a game and we get bounced in the division, or we lose another wild card game. Like, are we going to let that fool us into another season of said GM or said coach? You know, like at some point, it's like that's the tough decision as an owner. You know, as like, okay, we're making the playoffs, but at some point, like, just because you're making the playoffs doesn't mean that you're still not capped at what you're able to do with certain head coach or certain general manager, front office. Like, you know, I think of teams that like I grew up watching that weren't necessarily like NFL teams, but like, you know, the Houston Rockets with like Tracy McGrady. You know, they were never able to get out of like the first round or second round, or like other NBA teams, you know, like the Phoenix Suns or like the Utah Jazz, where it's just like they're good enough to like make the playoffs, but they're always just kind of like that first round exit.
Can never get over the hump. Yeah,
can never get over that. Like, you know, back in the day, it was like the Washington Wizards when they were like, you know, playing LeBron in the East. Like, it just, I don't know. Like, I don't want that to happen, where it's like you, just because you're a wild card team year after year, you're like, well, we can't change it because, you know, we're making the playoffs. We're good. We're a good team. We're right there. We're one play away from being a divisional team, and we're one play away from being this. Like, that's where I'm like, I feel like Tom Telesco, the last 3 years of his career, he's been bailed out by that thinking.
I mean, yeah, I don't think you're wrong saying that. Yeah, it's really about getting over that hump. You know, I believe we have the roster. We have the pieces. I'm certain of that. But it's about being able to put those pieces into the right places, and then, you know, being able to construct that roster. So, you know, I think it's too early on right now, just 0-1, to really dive too deep into that. But there is a set limit in which we can't just act like we're content when shit doesn't change. When it's the new year, same shit. So
yeah, and that's probably the overreaction of the episode. But you know, because like you said, it's week 1, but it's only an overreaction if things actually change, if things actually get better. You know, in the coming weeks, then it's an overreaction. If things don't, then it's kind of
Then we've
accurate.
got a real argument. Yeah.
Then we got some issues. Then the conversation can go a little deeper. But yeah, either way, it's just I think that's just the overall thing I'd like to sum up this episode, this day, this game is just disappointed, man. Like, stop promising us shit if that's going to be the result. Like again, I could come out and be just as critical after a win, because that was probably the vibe that I was going to have, even if we were able to pull that one off. Um, doesn't change the fact that there's still a lot of things that need to be addressed, and uh, a lot. It's just funny how sometimes, like, if you end up getting a win, that just erases so much for people. Like, it's just like sweep it on, like, oh, we got the win, sweep all of the concerns, under the rug. It doesn't matter. We got the win. Like, moving, it's in some ways it's, I don't know. It's just funny how that works out. But no, man, I guess where I'm going with this whole topic of Brandon Staley is I just really wish I would have seen more by now.
We all do. I mean, you're not alone in that. I think we wanted him to come in year one and just be able to revamp this whole unit. And now it's year 3, and it hasn't happened yet. So what is he doing? Like, what purpose is he serving on the team right now? If he needs to, if he wants to be a head coach, then give your DC duties down to Rolando Hill, or excuse me, not Rolando Hill. We used to have Rolando Hill, but down to
Derek
Derek
Ansley.
Ansley. Yeah, down to Derek Ansley. I just think I don't love the whole dynamic of having a guy be a coordinator and a head coach into one, because right now that's pretty much what Staley is. I just think he's got too much on his plate right now, and it's probably time that we at least give Ainsley that, at least give him a shot.
Yeah, and here's where my concern was in the offseason when not only when Ronaldo Hill quit, he didn't even get let go. He was like, "Nah, I'm done in LA. Like, I'm good over here." He left, and then it's awesome to promote guys within. I love that. Like, that's a cool story and well deserved for Derek Ansley. I mean, that's an awesome thing. My concern initially when they made that move was nothing's going to change. He's going to be a yes man to Staley. This is still Staley's defense. Like, if he truly wants, like, dude, every good coach needs to have just as good of like a coordinator on that side of the ball. It doesn't, even if they're like strong defensive minded coach, like, you still need to have a good defensive coordinator
Mhm.
to collaborate with. Like, you know, the best example is on the offensive side, but look at, Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy. I was watching the Commanders game earlier today because I had him in my parlay. And on the broadcast, they were talking about how, Bieniemy was just as involved with every single thing, notion, facet of that Chiefs offense that Andy Reid was in. Because that is coming from Andy Reid directly. He's saying, like, yeah, like, he basically, like, he was involved in every decision, every, you name it. And that just tells me that, like, as good as an offensive minded coach as Andy Reid is, like, he still had to have that other offensive minded guy right next to him, because that's the NFL, man. Like, the more minds you can put together on something, like, obviously, like, the more successful you're going to be. I mean, you can't just have that notion of, like, oh, I'm the defensive guy, I'm the coach, I'm going to run the, like, you're right. That's a lot to have on one guy's plate. And I really think that's kind of been a downfall to Brandon Staley and his, especially, dude, especially, like, with how young he is. Like, dude has never head coached any level of football, and you're gonna just try to tackle. Like, that's great, man. I love that. Like, go get him. But at some point, like, be real. Like, Belichick doesn't even fucking do that shit. So why would you go into? I don't even know, man. Like, it's just certain things to me. Like, it's always the little things with Brandon Staley for me. Like, he does have his games like today where it's easy to call him out on anything because they just look terrible. But for me, it's the little things that like doesn't go as noticed, but over time, I'm like, wow, that was something that we should have like honed in on, or that was a red flag, or that was something to talk about. Um, whether it's clock management, games, in-game decisions, game plans, schemes, like roster, specifically roster evaluation and development. It took a couple of starters to go down last season for a couple backups to shine and basically outperform the starters. And then when the starters get healthy, they come back in, take their job back, and we go back a step. Like that to me is like screams coach malpractice. How do you not even fucking know who your best players on your team are? Like that drives me crazy about him.
Oh, Brandon. Oh, Brandon. Yeah, just didn't have his best stuff today. I think that we'll be able to bounce back though. Tennessee next week. Ryan Tannehill threw 3 picks today, so that's awesome. But yeah, 0-1 to start the year is obviously not ideal, especially when that loss is to the Dolphins. But here we are. So
Missed opportunity to take a game lead on the Kansas City Chiefs, and just to fucking pour salt into the wound, the Las Vegas Raiders are the fucking AFC West leaders after week 1. So thank you,
hey,
football gods.
hey, someone out of the Broncos Raiders game had to win. So I mean, either
I'm
way,
actually very surprised that the Broncos were not like same old Russell Wilson. It seems like fucking Sean
yeah.
Payton didn't do shit.
Yeah, I don't know. I really do think that AFC West may be up for grabs this year.
No, stop.
I don't know,
It's
man.
the Chiefs are gonna win this division going away.
Chiefs are tied for last in the division right now, so
Okay, smart ass. One game. Like
I'm just saying
give it. All
it's
right,
gonna be
all
up
right.
it's gonna be up
Let's
for
talk about actual AFC West implications like after week 6.
okay,
Let's
yeah.
just do that.
Just saying though. I don't know.
Like, give me 5 more games. I guarantee I would bet a lot of money in my wallet, which is not a lot, that the Chiefs are probably at least 4-2 after 6
I don't
games.
know what the whole Chris Jones situation. That's kind of a big deal. So I don't know, man. Probably not. No, and
I mean,
I'm not gonna sit
Kelsey's
here
going to
and
come
talk
back.
about it.
That's a fact, and that's going to help their offense out tremendously. And their defense is always suspect, so it's basically, how much can they improve when Kelsey comes back on offense? Can they basically just outscore everybody? And if that's the case, they'll be able to get away with a lot.
True. So, but yeah, I don't really have anything else. Sucks. Loss sucks. But
0-1,
but
baby. Nothing we ain't used to. Chargers are not particularly known to start fast. Doesn't
well, we've won it. We before this week we had won 4 straight opening games, so that streak comes to an end.
Yeah, that is
Unfortunately,
true. But it's
but
always like we win like the opening games, but we'll still start like 1-2. So
oh, I think we start 1 and 2 like every year, pretty much. So
yeah. But if you look around the AFC today, a lot of teams are starting 0-1. A lot of favored playoff teams pretty much starting 0-1 today. I mean, the Chiefs 0-1, that loss on Thursday night. Bengals got whooped by the Browns. Joe Burrow doesn't look like himself, so it looks like his was it his quad
something in his leg, quad
calf or
ankle, something
something.
along those lines. Yeah.
So he doesn't look like Joe Burrow quite yet. So there's kind of an asterisk on that one. Steelers, a lot of people, I don't know why everyone's on the Steelers bandwagon this year, but a lot of people picked them to be a playoff team. They got absolutely fucking demolished by the Niners. And who else lost?
Well, 16 teams will be 0-1 after this week, according to my calculations. So we are not alone.
Bills and Jets are going to beat up each other tomorrow night. So someone there is going to start 0-1. So again, that's another silver lining, I guess, is Chargers start 0-1, but a handful of other contenders are also 0-1. So it's super early. Just move on from this as quick as possible. Thank God it's week 1, and it'll hopefully get forgotten soon. And I I'm not going to be on Twitter much the next 48 hours. I can tell you that much.
Dolphins fans, you win this one.
Yeah. So, all right, man. Anything else you want to add before we head out of here?
It's not the end of the world. On one, we'll be all right.
I like it, man. I agree, man. We'll get out of this, and we'll get the ball rolling at some point. So, thank you guys very much for tuning in to another episode of Chargers Powder Hour podcast. Make sure to follow us on social media on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook at Powder Hour Pod LA. That is our handle, or you can always search Chargers Powder Hour podcast and find us that way. Make sure to subscribe if you're watching this or listening to this on YouTube. Don't be afraid to throw us a subscribe button. And if you're also listening to this on Spotify, Apple, don't be afraid to leave us a review. Be honest. We always, want to be the best version of this podcast that we can be. So leave us a review, hopefully 5 stars. But other than that, we will see you guys here in a couple of days when we preview the Tennessee Titans. And as always, bolt up.